So now that we have this starting screen and then the questions screen with all these questions, it's time to also add a results screen, which should look like this. The goal with this screen is to simply show a summary of all the questions that have been answered. The user should see how many questions have been answered correctly, and then they should simply see a list of all those questions with a clear indicator that shows whether a question has been answered correctly or not, and with the correct answer next to the answer that has been chosen by the user. This list of questions here also should be scrollable, since it shouldn't occupy the entire screen, but instead it should be placed between this summary statistics title and a button that can be used to restart the quiz. So that's what we're going to work on now. And for that, as a first step, we'll add a new file for a new widget, and that of course will be our results screen widget, which will be stored in a results screen.dart file. Now this results screen widget will actually be a stateless widget because it won't need to manage any internal state, as you will see. So this is my results screen class, which extends stateless widget, as you learned. And of course, as always, we therefore must import this Flutter package and their material.dart to unlock stateless widget. And in this results screen widget, you then should add this build method, as always. And in here, I want to output this screen, which I just showed you a couple of seconds ago. Now, if you take a look at this screen, you of course see that there are a couple of items placed on top of each other, above each other. And that always is a clear indicator that we want to use a column, because as you learned already, this is a widget built into Flutter that can be used to display a vertical list of widgets. Therefore, in this build method in the results screen, we can return the column widget and set its children argument to a list of child widgets that should be inside of this column. Now, just as in the questions screen, my column should take up all the available width though, and it should have some margin around it, and therefore we can indeed use that same pattern that we already used in this questions screen widget. Hence, I'll copy that code, and in my results screen, I'll put that before my column here, and then make sure that my column widget is actually set as a child inside of that container widget, and then I need a couple of closing parentheses thereafter, so that the code looks like this. With that, I have a column widget here, which generally takes up the entire space on this screen. And just as on the questions screen, I then also want to make sure that I center my items along the main axis. So therefore, I'll also copy this setting over to the column widget in the results screen widget. And now we can get started adding some widgets here to this list of widgets. And here the first widget is actually that text widget that tells us how many questions have been answered correctly. And for the moment, I'll just add some hard-coded dummy text here, where I'll say you answered X out of Y questions correctly. And this can then be turned into a constant value, or actually the entire list can be turned into a constant value right now. So with that, we have this text here. Then I want to add a sized box to add some vertical spacing by giving this a height of, let's say, 30. You can, of course, always tweak this height value if you want to. And then below that, I want to have that scrollable list of questions where we have the question, the correct answer, and the chosen answer. So I'll get back to this. I'll just add a placeholder text widget for now. List of answers and questions. And below that list, which will be added here in the future, I want to have another sized box for some spacing, and then that button that can be used to restart the quiz. And for that here, I'll just use a standard text button. Of course, you could also use some other kind of button, but here a text button it is. And that text button takes the on pressed argument and a child argument. Now the child argument should be a text widget, which sets the text that is displayed on that button. And in this case, the text should be restart quiz. And for onPressed, I'll just add a dummy empty function for now. And here I'm getting an error because of the const keyword in front of this list here, because all these widgets can be set to constant values, but the text button can't. Therefore, I'll just manually add const in front of all these other widgets, but not in front of text button. But with that, of course, this button doesn't do anything right now, but we'll soon change this. This is just the general structure of this custom results screen widget. To complete this widget for now, we also must add our constructor function here and accept and forward that named key argument. And this can also be turned into a const constructor function. Now with that, we can add some logic to show this results screen instead of that starting screen once we exhausted all our questions. So here in the quiz state class, where I currently set the active screen to start screen once we exhausted the questions, I want to set this to results screen instead. And then in the build method here, I of course also want to set my screen widget to that results screen if active screen is set to results screen. And for that, we first of all have to import this results screen Dart file in which we just worked to unlock this results screen widget in this file. And then here in this build method of this quiz widget, of this quiz state class to be precise, I want to check if my active screen variable holds a value of results-screen, which of course is the value we are setting here. And if that is the case, I'll set screen widget equal to results screen like this. And then we can add const in front of this. And if you now save this and force a reload, you should be able to start the quiz and go through all these questions. But once you answer the last question, you end up on this dummy results screen, which is not finished yet, but which generally shows the content we just added to that screen. Of course, now we must make sure that this button here works if we press it, and we need to output the actual summary information for this quiz.